Is the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G worth buying in 2023? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, and this is the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Now, this device was launched in March of 2022, so this phone is not even a year old yet. However, since being launched, we have gotten quite a few other options that have reached the market, so I figured I'd make this video and kind of look back on the phone and reassess things to see how it stands at this point. Now, since being launched, this device has been very popular for Samsung. It is offered directly from Samsung in the US, as well as being at a variety of different carriers. So I definitely recommend taking a look at the various links in the video description to see the most up-to-date pricing and availability for this phone. But from what I've seen, it seems like wherever you get it, you're not really going to end up getting this phone for the full MSRP, as there tend to be a lot of different promotions and discounts being offered. And especially at the carriers, I know that they really offer some great discounts on this phone, especially in exchange for switching in from another carrier. But I suppose it really depends on when you're watching this video for the availability of this device, as I'd imagine eventually it will be phased out. But overall, I definitely don't think it's been a coincidence that the A53 5G has been as successful as it's been, since this phone really offers a lot considering that it is a mid-range device. Now here is the box that the phone does come in, and it is a pretty slim box, and the reason for that is because there is no USB wall adapter included. So definitely keep that in mind. You might have some USB wall adapters already. However, this phone does support up to 25 watt fast charging. So unless you have a 25 watt fast charger already, then you won't be able to recharge this phone at its maximum rate. And that's definitely something that you'll want to do. I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video, but the fast charging is really one of the best features with this phone. But in the box, we get a SIM card removal tool. We also get a quick start guide for the phone. And then we also get a double-sided USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. Now with this device, we're getting a very large 6.5-inch display. And this display does feature Corning Gorilla Glass 5, which does make it extra durable. Now things get even better from there. We have a Super AMOLED display here with the phone, which means that we're getting really great colors, also excellent viewing angles too, so that's a really good premium touch. And this phone also features a 120 Hz refresh rate. So the refresh rate here is very smooth, definitely makes the phone feel a lot more expensive than it is. And combining that with the processor that does keep up really well with that refresh rate, you're getting a really smooth experience with this device. So the phone definitely seems a lot more expensive than it is, that's for sure. Now the display is 1080p. We're getting a PPI of 405, a 20:9 aspect ratio, so kind of a more narrow but taller form factor, which makes this phone ideal for social media because you're able to fit more of your social media feed in a single frame, which essentially means that you won't have to scroll quite as much with this phone. And then we're also getting an 85.4% screen to body ratio, so very small bezels all throughout. Now the bottom bezel is a little bit thicker than the others, but overall this phone is a great design. Now, another thing I like about this device is that even though it does have a hole punch for the front-facing camera, that actual hole punch is very small. So unlike Apple's Dynamic Island, for example, this is not nearly as intrusive in comparison and really isn't a problem. Another cool thing too is that the front camera is 32 megapixels, so the phone can take really great looking photos and videos with the front camera, but definitely look at my full review video of this device to see a variety of different image samples from all the various cameras on the phone. Now this phone is offered in multiple storage configurations. I believe in the US you can only get it in 128 gigabytes, but in other regions it's also offered in 256 gigs. And this phone also supports microSD card expansion, so regardless of what storage configuration you get it in, you can always add in a microSD card to offload photos and videos, for example, which is certainly very useful. But even at that smaller configuration of 128 gigabytes, it's really cool to see that Samsung is giving this device so much standard storage, despite it being a mid-range phone. Now with this device, there is no wireless charging, unfortunately, but we do have an in-display fingerprint sensor, and it works really well. It's nice and fast and accurate, so no problems there. And in addition to that, this phone also supports Face Unlock. So I do appreciate that we have multiple methods here for accessing the phone. Then on the back of the device, we have a quad camera setup, giving us a 64 megapixel main camera a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera that can capture images at up to 123 degrees, a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera to assist with portrait mode, and we have a 5 megapixel macro camera for close-up images. And this phone does support portrait mode for both the rear and front cameras, which is certainly really helpful. And in addition to that, this device does support 4K video recording with the front and rear cameras as well. So if you do want to take video in 4K and put it up on your 4K TV, then you can definitely do that here with this phone. Now here's how things look on the camera app. This is with the main camera right now. Then from here, we can switch over to the ultra wide angle camera to fit a lot more content into the frame. The ultra wide camera, for me at least, is especially helpful when I'm on vacation, because if I want to take a photo of a large building or maybe a lot of scenery around me, it's definitely nice having that other option there to kind of crop things out a bit. But of course, the main camera does offer the best quality of all the various cameras, so I do tend to use that the most. Now, in addition to those two cameras, we can also go to the More tab to access the macro camera. And with the macro camera, we can get very close up here and have things be in really good detail. So definitely a nice feature to have as well. And then we do have portrait mode for both the rear camera and front camera. And we also have the ability to adjust the blur here. So you can take portrait selfies. There's also a mode here for group selfies, so it does crop things out slightly there to fit a few more people potentially into the camera frame here. So in general, despite this being a mid-range device from Samsung, we're really getting a lot of different features, especially when it comes to the cameras. So I think this is a great phone if maybe you're not sure if you want to pay extra for a $1,000 high-end flagship phone, but at the same time, you want to get a lot of those various features that you tend to find with a device like that. Now, of course, the main difference is that even though we do have all these various cameras, the actual quality is not nearly at the level of a flagship device. But again, if you're not sure about spending all that money because you're not sure if you're going to be using all those features or not, then at least this phone is a good place to start. And if you find yourself actually using these various features, then it is further justification to spend a bit more money on something more advanced next time around. Now, as far as the general performance of this device goes, I would say it's adequate for the majority of people out there, unless you're somebody that's literally always on your phone. Maybe you're constantly taking photos and videos and maybe editing those videos as well and playing high-performance games. If that's you, then I would probably go for something a bit higher end compared to the Galaxy A53 5G. But if you just want a good, practical smartphone for phone calls, text messages, going on the web, email, watching video content, going on social media, then this phone definitely will be adequate for that. And then by having 5G compatibility, you can use this phone with your carrier's latest and greatest network. Now, is 5G necessarily something that you must have at this moment? I don't think so. I think you can definitely get by. But if you're going to go through all the work of buying a brand new smartphone, I do feel like you may as well get one that does support your carrier's latest and greatest network. Now with this device, we are getting 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, depending on what region you get it in. I believe in the US, this device does come with 6 gigabytes of RAM, but the processor with this phone is the Samsung Exynos 1280. Now, I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test, and here are the scores from that test, as you can see. So I got a single core score of 742 and a multi-core score of 1910. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone and then compare your scores to these scores to get a better idea of how the Galaxy A53 5G measures up to your current phone. Because if this phone is actually slower than your current device, then that certainly wouldn't make it an upgrade. But I do have a feeling that for most people, this phone certainly will be better than the device they currently have. Now, with this phone, we are getting a very large 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery, so definitely expect to get a full day, if not 2 days of usage out of this phone on a single charge, which is really good. And then we're also getting 25 watt fast charging. Now, I already mentioned that earlier on in the video about that, but again, keep in mind that there is no charger included in the box. Now, if you want to use a charger that you already have, I would definitely recommend checking the wattage. You can certainly use that charger with this phone, but many of the chargers that I know, for me at least, that I have laying around tend to be between 5 and 10 watts. So if I was to use a 5 or 10 watt charger with this device, then I would be recharging it at a fraction of the potential maximum speed. And the reason why that's especially a problem with the A53 5G is because we are getting such a large battery with it. So the good thing about a large battery is that It's a large battery, so you're going to get a lot of battery life with the phone. But the downside to it is that if you want to recharge it from empty, you're going to have a faster charger, or else it's going to take a while to recharge. So certainly something worth keeping in mind. That being said though, I am glad at least that this phone does have compatibility for 25-watt fast charging, as having fast charging is really one of my favorite features to have with a modern smartphone. Now with this device, we are getting NFC, so if you are a big fan of making mobile contactless payments using tap and pay, you can definitely do that with this phone using services such as Samsung Pay, for example. So that's a great feature, and certainly something that I use with any phone that I'm testing that happens to have that feature. And this phone also features IP67 dust and water resistance, which means that it can go underwater for up to 1 meter for up to 30 minutes. Another great thing about this phone too is that it does feature stereo speakers. So if you're watching a movie or if you're listening to music on this phone, you'll be getting audio coming out of both the main speaker on the bottom, but also the earpiece up top, which gives you a more immersive audio listening experience. So overall, this phone has a lot of really awesome features and specifications, and especially for a mid-range phone. But let's now take a closer look at the actual hardware itself. Now, other than the front panel, which is made of glass, the rest of this phone is made completely out of plastic, so keep that in mind. I would definitely recommend pairing up the A53 5G with some sort of protective case, just to make sure that the phone doesn't get too scratched up as time goes on, just so you can get a little bit more longevity out of it. But taking a look at the left side of the phone, we have nothing. Then on the right side, we have volume up, volume down, and also the power button. Then up top here, we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the phone, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and the speaker. And then on the back of the phone, we just have the camera module and Samsung logo. But I am a big fan of this finish on the back of the device. Like I mentioned, it is made out of plastic, but I do like that it is a matte finish, so it really doesn't pick up too many fingerprints. And in general, this phone looks a lot more premium than you might expect, considering that it is a mid-range phone. Now, if you are a fan of using traditional wired headphones, then you probably will be a bit disappointed with the A53 5G, since it does not have a dedicated 3.5mm headphone jack. However, you can get an adapter to plug into the USB-C port on this device if you do want to use your wired headphones, so keep that in mind. But in general, I do think the Galaxy A53 5G is still an excellent option. There is definitely a reason why this phone has been such a large success for Samsung, and why people in general have been very happy with their purchase when getting this phone. But most importantly, I'm really curious to know what you think about the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G. Is it still a good option in 2023? Or do you think that there are better options to go for instead? Definitely let me know in the comment section below. But this concludes my video on the Samsung Galaxy A53 5G in 2023. If you liked the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next video.